Before we dive into today's episode, I have something truly special to share. Next September, I'll be leading an intimate women's retreat through the south of France and northern Italy, and you're invited. Picture this: mornings exploring the colorful markets of the French Riviera, afternoons sipping wine, and a hotel view with golden Mediterranean sunsets. Whether you love photography, food, or just want to reconnect with your playful creative self, this trip is designed for you. Spots are limited, so if all this sounds like your kind of adventure, please visit tourwithabsolutely.com and look for the tour France and Italy with Crystal. You can also send me a message or check out the show notes. Claudine Hemingway is a descendant of famed writer Ernest Hemingway. We bumped into each other at a party and decided to team up and dive deep into French history, but with a twist, by bringing a spotlight to those lesser-known creatives in France. This is History with a Hemingway. Welcome back to Paris History, Avec Hemingway, and today we are talking about Claudine's favorite person, maybe in the entire planet, who is no longer living, Delacroix. And Claudine's going to tell us everything there is to know about Delacroix, and we'll just jump right in.
I mean, sadly, I think, the majority of my favorite people aren't living.
Yes. I mean, we've learned that through the podcast.
Well, but I'm a historian, so I spend a majority of my time with dead people.
Yes. I mean, this is very fitting.
But we did this one to come out today because Eugène Delacroix was born on April 26, 1798, which is also the day I was born.
Oh my God, you share a birthday with him.
Not the year, thankfully, but we were both born on April 26th, and it was something that I didn't learn until after I started falling in love with his art. And then one day I was like, wait a minute, what? It's kismet. It's meant to be.
That is pretty wild that you have the same birthday.
It is. And also Marie de Medici.
That's wild.
And I. M. Pei, who did the pyramid at the Louvre.
Oh my gosh, even wilder. Okay, it's all coming together.
So we could only do one of them today, but I thought we would do this because it's a special one all about him. So he was, as I said, born April 26, 1798, which was 225 years ago this week. He was born during the last year of the Revolution.
Yikes.
So, which is good. Towards the end is better. But he was born in Charenton-Saint-Maurice, which is just literally on the edge of Paris. Like you could even just take the metro, not even the RER, just right on the edge of Paris. His mother was named Victoria Aubin. She was born in 1758. She came from a family of cabinet makers. Her father was the cabinet maker to Louis XV and Marie Antoinette. So if you go out to Versailles, you probably are looking at some of the stuff that her family did. And his father was Charles Delacroix, who was born in 1741. But there also has been some people like to think that Charles was not his father because he had a testicular tumor. And they say that, during the time that he did would have been when he would have been conceived. And so he would not have been able to do that. So a family friend of theirs was Talleyrand. Talleyrand was a minister under Napoleon. He was, at first, Napoleon thought he was the greatest thing in the world, and then he thought he was the worst thing in the world. But Talleyrand, everything, like I really looked in to see, really went deep on this story and to figure it out. And historians are like, Talleyrand had like blonde hair and very fair skin, and Delacroix had very dark black hair and kind of olive complexion. And there was actually a surgeon that did an operation on his father, and he did that before 9 months that the Delacroix was born. So it's pretty sure that Charles Delacroix was his father, but those stories are always fun.
Yeah, we're interested in them.
We always love those stories, like the mother husband or the father husband of Recamier.
Sister wives.
But his sister, so he was the fourth child. He had an older sister, Henriette de Varignac. She was born in 1782, and then Charles Henry, born in 1779. He had a older brother that was just born right before him, about a year and a half before him, that died when he was very young. His grandmother remarried Jean-Henri Resnier. He was also a cabinet maker, and he had a son, Léon Resnier, who was Delacroix's cousin, who was also an artist. And if you go into the Louvre and you go and see the room, one of the rooms that has a bunch of Delacroix, there's the painting of Leon Resnier, and he's really handsome. But he used to live just not very far from Montmartre. He lived just down in the Ninth in the Saint Georges area. And the Resniers lived just a couple blocks away from where Delacroix was living at that time. But I love that the fact that they were just all these cabinet makers, and apparently, that's your dating pool is other cabinet makers.
You stick to your class.
stick to your group. But when he after his father died in 1805, and so Delacroix was only 6 years old at the time, and so they ended up moving. At that point, they were living in Bordeaux. They moved up to Paris, and then he went to the Lycée Impérial, which is what we know today as the Lycée Louis le Grand, which is on the Boulevard Saint-Jacques, which is kind of right there in the midst of the Sorbonne. And it's just right over there, and you see it. It's got this gorgeous, gorgeous entryway and door. And so he lived here in 1815. His uncle Henry Resnier introduced him to Pierre Narcisse Guérin, who was training him as a neoclassical painter, which Delacroix is not known for whatsoever.
Yeah.
But it was, and then right after that, he went to the École des Beaux-Arts. So the École des Beaux-Arts, which is just over here in Saint-Germain, is he ended up going there because it was cheaper than being in the studio. And so it was, he was able to go there, which everybody under the sun was going there to school, which was, all the big names. But while he was there, he met Ari Scheffer, who is the man from the Musée de la Romantique, which is a museum you love, which is a beautiful museum.
Yeah.
And then Leon Cogniet. And then this is where he also met Géricault.
Ah.
So he met Théodore Géricault, he was older than him. And he really inspired him. And Géricault is pretty much known as was the main leader of the Romantic period. Géricault died in 1824. And when he died, basically it was Delacroix's turn to take over the mantle of being the king of the Romantic era. And when Delacroix later died, they say that's also the end of the Romantic era.
Oh, wow.
But that's not where we're ending. I just get spoiler alert.
Yeah. End of it.
Yeah. At 17 years old, he was a copyist in the Louvre, of course. Like all the artists were going in there and they'd set up their easel, which we've talked about before and how you could still do that today. In 1820, he failed to win the Prix de Rome, which was a really big deal back then. And so, these artists would enter that. And if you won it, the French government would send you to Rome to go to school there. And, Poisson, all of these artists would go there and then come back. And then, you could basically charge a lot more for all of your paintings. But when he lost that, he decided he worked as a costume designer for a short period of time, which was new to me. I just learned that one. And then I had to keep myself from then spending 4 hours looking on the internet for Delacroix's costumes.
Oh my God. I love that.
But he also started doing, he would be commissioned to decorate people's apartments. So just going in there and painting, scenes on the walls and stuff. Because you have to think, like, when we think of artists today, and I mean, even looking back. So when you look back and you think of Delacroix or Van Gogh or Picasso, like to us, they're like just huge. Like everybody in the world knows Van Gogh or Picasso. Those are two artists that everybody knows. Even if you couldn't recognize a painting, their names.
Yeah.
But back then, artists it wasn't for who they were or what they were doing. It was about just, you need to paint me something, or we're commissioning you to do this portrait. It wasn't about them as a personality, obviously their talent, but it wasn't really what it is like now today.
Yeah.
So he was, he didn't really want, when he was studying under Guérin, he didn't really love studying all of these like very traditional academic ways, the pyramid and all these things you were supposed to do. And he kind of would get bored with it. And he would kind of take shortcuts. So he would sometimes just put the varnish on before the paint was really dry, and then the paint would crack. And then 2 years later, he had to basically redo the whole thing again and like scrape it away and get it. So he was kind of like, a lot of people kind of knew him as, this guy that was just like, he just wanted to get on to the next thing.
Yeah. He was ready to make more.
Which is not a very Taurus thing of him. Usually we like to complete everything to the point of we might go crazy, but it kills us to not complete something.
Yeah, exactly.
But maybe he just had, he wanted to complete it. He just did it a little quicker.
Yeah.
So in 1825, from April to August, he went to England. And when he was in England, he discovered the Shakespeare Theater. He discovered Faust. He was seeing Hamlet. He was seeing and reading all the stuff written by Lord Byron. And because he originally kind of wanted to actually be a writer, he was really inspired by all these stories. And then he started to sketch scenes that he was reading and he was seeing on stage. He started sketching all those things out.
Oh, cool.
Which when you go into the Louvre, you see a bunch of them. There's some of the ones of, Hamlet and the Lord Byron. And so it's really interesting. Like, when you think of like Picasso, who has all these periods, the rose and the blue and the cubist, Delacroix kind of had a lot of that too. Most artists back then kind of found their niche and stayed in it.
Yeah.
He kind of was like, well, I kind of like doing all of this historical. I kind of like doing this religious, and I kind of like doing this literary. So he kind of bounced around doing whatever things he wanted to do, which is kind of cool.
I love that. Relatable.
Yeah. So on April 24th, 1822, so 201 years ago, the day you're listening to this, he did a painting of Dante and Virgil that went for the Salon. And this is another one he worked too fast on, and the varnish cracked. But this was a painting that he was inspired by Géricault's The Raft of the Medusa, which was painted in 1818. Delacroix is actually modeled for that painting of Géricault. A lot of people think that Géricault is in Liberty Leading the People, which is Delacroix's most famous piece, but it's actually the other way around, that Delacroix is in Géricault's, which is that painting alone. We could do a whole episode about that painting. It's pretty amazing, but he saw it. And so then after that, Delacroix painted a couple paintings of like scenes that are out in the middle of the water, in the ocean, in a boat. The one of Dante is Dante and Virgil standing on a boat while the damned are kind of like basically almost biting away at the boat.
Wow.
And anytime Dante and Virgil I always love finding those two, because you love the stories, especially because of Rodin. But he was when Delacroix first saw the sketches that Géricault was doing, he like was running through the street and yelling, because his mind was blown, like what he was doing. Because before you have Romanticism, which we've talked about a whole episode just about that, was Neoclassicism. And Neoclassicism is where everything is like, you don't see the brushstrokes, and all of the, the skin and the bodies are very luminescent and very like porcelain white. And then here comes Romanticism, where it's history, but it's like current history. So it's something that just recently happened, when Neoclassicism is doing something that was from, the 3rd century BC in Greece. And, it's much, old history. And Romanticism is like, wait a minute, we're seeing all this stuff right now. We're going to share this. And people were like, wait a minute, what is going on? And why are you painting it like this? And what are all these colors? And it was a huge departure from everything they had been seeing.
Yeah, it's totally different.
Totally different. And it's pretty cool. Like the Louvre and the Denon Wing, you have two big, huge red rooms that are off of where the Mona Lisa is. And one of them is basically Romanticism and the kind of the school of Delacroix. And then the other one is David and Ingres and Neoclassicism. And so it's kind of cool how they have it somewhat pretty close together. So you could really see the vast difference. When I take people into the Louvre, I always show those rooms because, Delacroix. But it's you could really instantly, when you see it that close, you could see how different it is.
Yeah. It's totally different than what you would think for the rest of the Louvre.
Yeah, for sure. And so in the 1820s, he started painting horses. In the 1824, he painted another famous painting that's in the Louvre. That's a scene of the massacre of Scio. It was shown at the Salon of 1824, and he won a second place medal. It was a incident that happened in 1822, and the Turks went in and killed everybody that lived in the inhabitants of Scio, which was part of Greece, and that's kind of when after that was when basically the Greek independence. He didn't know, he hadn't been there, so he would go and study at the National Library and look at costumes and things that the people were wearing in Greece, and that's how he figured it out for the painting.
That's so cool that you're just studying those like other pictures and then
I
creating.
know, we're so the same.
Yes, you are the exact same person.
Yeah, I can't paint anyway. But he, some people really criticized him, but he did have a lot of, Victor Hugo was a little on the fence about him. But Théophile Gautier and Baudelaire and even Adolphe Thiers, who was a minister, but he would end up being the president of France for a short period of time after Napoleon III. They were all huge supporters of him. The Romantic years started, it's actually a very, very long period of time, but during 1825 to 1831 is when they really were kind of setting off. At the beginning of 1825, he went over to England again, and he went to Westminster Abbey, and that's where, when he was there, he met other English artists like Wilkie and Lawrence. When he was over there, that's what, he was looking at all of these different authors and all of these books, but then he was also kind of seeing what kind of style of painting they were doing over there too, and then he kind of was incorporating that into what he kind of did is he kind of created his whole own thing.
Yeah, his own movement.
Yeah, so there's a romantic movement, and then he was also really involved in Orientalism. And in Orientalism, he was one of the very few artists that actually went to Morocco. And so he, under Louis Philippe, he was invited with the Count of Mornier in 1832 for 7 months to go. They went to Morocco, Algeria, and Northern Africa. And while he was there, he filled 10 different journals with sketches, all these sketches. And I saw those sketches, some of those journals at this huge Delacroix exhibit they had a few years ago that I made sure to go on our birthday. The right thing to do. But I saw some of those journals, and every time I see an artist journal like that, it's just amazing. But most of these artists, like, when he was doing this scene from CO, he's going to the library and he's studying what they were wearing. And that's what most artists were doing. Most of the other artists that were doing Orientalism, they were just doing these, just picking up and just figuring out what these scenes were and just making them up in their mind. And he was one of the only ones that actually got to go. He was even in Algiers, was even invited into a harem, which is a big no-go for most men to do that. And they let him go in there, and he sketched it. And then he ended up doing the painting, The Woman of Algiers, in their apartment that's in the Louvre that was just restored about 2 years ago. And it's stunning now. Like, her shirt is like crisp white. And that is a painting that like Picasso and Manet loved and both copied.
I love that Monet loved him too.
I know. I love it. So he always kind of picked these, like, there's another painting that's not on display in the Louvre right now. It's also being restored. Excuse me. That's the death of Sardanapal. And he was this king that knew that somebody was coming to kill him. And so he decided to surround his bed with women and all of his vices.
What?
So he had like drinking and women. There was horses in there, all of this stuff, because he thought, if I'm going to go and they're going to kill me, I'm going to go down with looking at everything that I like.
I like that.
And getting drunk as a skunk. But Ingres at the time, who was like the king of neoclassicism, they were like the main rivals. And at that point, like, Ingres was getting commissioned to do ceilings in the Louvre, but he was criticizing and complaining about Delacroix all the time. It doesn't change. every movement does this. Everybody thought the Impressionists were wackos, and the Impressionists thought the Cubists were wackos. It's, now it's kind of, I mean, I'm not into contemporary art really at all. So it just seems like it's all hodgepodge now. It's like everybody just do what you want.
Yeah, exactly. Like it's all good.
There's not really those movements anymore, after like modern. I mean, Picasso and Matisse, all those guys are considered modern art, which is just a huge umbrella.
Yeah, I mean it all like they're wacko. They're all wacko now.
Yeah, they're all, yeah. So, but Delacroix was really inspired by like Rubens, which you could really see that again in the Louvre. And then Delacroix inspired Gauguin and Chagall and Manet and all of these. Like basically, they looked at him as like their idol. Delacroix, a big thing that he believed in is that he believed, and at this point, you have to remember that, the Louvre opened in 1793, so it has a big anniversary this year, but there wasn't galleries all over the place. There wasn't museums all over the place. So he thought the way to be remembered would be to be remembered by doing these huge pieces in public spaces. And so he thought that that's what you needed to do. And he tried to encourage other artists to do the same thing, but nobody really got into it or thought about it. So, but he was commissioned for his first thing in a church in 1824 for the Saint Paul Saint Louis Church, which is just right there on Saint Antoine, which right before it turns into Rue de Rivoli. Really beautiful, cool church with this giant, giant red door. In there, when you go in on the left, is Christ in the Garden of Olives. And I think we actually have talked about the art in the churches that you can see.
Mm-hmm.
Not far from there, in 1840, he did the Pietà, which is in the Saint Denis de Saint-Sacrement church. And then, of course, everybody knows this one is Saint-Sulpice. And so in 1849, he was commissioned to do 3 paintings. They had to be the theme of an angel. He could do whatever he wanted, but they just had to keep the angel theme. So there's 3 of them. There's the combat of Jacob and the angel, and then there's Helioterra being expelled from the temple. These ones are both frescoes he did on the wall. He did it where he added wax into the paint. And so it was something that not many people that were doing frescoes did. And because he did that, it adhered the paint to the wall better, and it actually made the colors more vibrant, and it lasted longer.
Whoa, that's cool.
So take that, Michelangelo.
You got nothing on our man.
We're about 300 years difference there, but it is pretty cool. And in 2016, when I first came to Paris, basically the top of my list was Saint-Sulpice, partially because of Delacroix, but partially because of Da Vinci Code. And I went into there, and I was so excited. And as soon as I walked in the door, and the Chapel of the Angels is the very first chapel on your right when you walk in the door. And it was completely covered up because they were restoring it.
So you didn't get to see it.
And I was so bummed out. But then I came back in November, and it was wide open. And I just was in there today. I go in there probably 4 days a week, and I just walk in and look at it. I light a candle because Saint-Sulpice is really close to me. And so I love that I can now just pop in there anytime I want. But, he really believed that this was the way. And what's great about that is it is a way for us all. You can see Delacroix in 3, churches in the city for absolutely free.
That's so cool. And yeah. You're right. Like, we don't even have to think about it. You just go to a church, you see his work.
Yeah, you can see Charles Lebrun, Eustache Lesueur, all these guys. But then in 1833, thankfully to Adolphe Thiers, he commissioned Delacroix to do the Palais Bourbon, which is now the Assemblée Nationale. There is the Salon de Roi, the Salon of the King. He did that. And then after that, in 1840, he did the library. In 1840, he also, and it took him 11 years, he did the Library of the Senate, which is the Palais de Luxembourg. And all those 2 buildings you could only see that weekend in September. So that fantastic 3rd weekend of September and I think maybe this year I should actually put something together because I talk about this so much. And so if people are coming, reach out to me because I think I'm going to try to organize things to take people to some of these places.
Yeah.
Because there's a lot that goes into it to figure out when you're going. In 1850, he did the ceiling and the center of the Galerie d'Apollon. He wanted to see himself hanging in the Louvre. And so you had to be dead 10 years before you could do that. And then he was commissioned in 1850 because they were updating some of the stuff in the Galerie des Palais where the crown jewels are. And he got to do that. And so he saw himself hanging in the Louvre before he died.
That's amazing.
Yeah. He also, in 1851, he did a bunch of paintings in the Hotel de Ville, in the Salon de la Paix, and it was destroyed in 1871, of course, in the Commune. And so sadly, none of that stuff remains. But he really worked his whole life doing all of this stuff. He said when he was doing Saint-Sulpice, which he finished in 1860, it was inaugurated in 1861, and no official came there to the inauguration, which kind of upset him. He kind of didn't get a whole lot of respect a lot of time, which I think, it's hard now because these people are, larger than life.
Yeah.
But he also wanted to be a part of the Academy of Paintings, and it wasn't until his eighth time that they actually voted him into a seat.
Wow.
And so it kind of took him a long time. But he had said to a friend of his in a letter, he said that this project at Saint-Sulpice was going to kill him. And about a year and a half after he finished, on August 13th, 1863, at 7 a.m, he died of tuberculosis and complications of tuberculosis. He had moved over to what is now the Musée Delacroix on the Rue de Furstenberg. He had moved over there when he was working on Saint-Sulpice so he could just be closer to it. So he did that in 1857. And when he moved there, if you've gone there, you go back and there's this lovely little courtyard in his atelier. Well, he had the whole atelier built. So the atelier was built to his specifications, how he wanted it. So it's even kind of more special to be able to go inside there. But he was never married. He was involved with quite a few different women. Most of them were married.
Whoops.
And he had this friend, Jean-Marie Le Goulion. She started working with him when he moved to Rue Visconti, which is a street that's literally right off of the École des Beaux-Arts. He moved there in 1835. And he was living there and had a studio, and he hired Jenny, and Jenny was brought in to basically help him around the house and just take care of him and cook for him and everything. And she was with him, holding his hand at the time that he died.
Oh, that's so sweet.
Yeah. After he died, died, August 13th that I said. And on August 17th, 1863, his funeral was held in the very close by Saint-Germain-des-Prés, which is just around the corner from where he lived. At the funeral were, Manet was there, Whistler was there, Baudelaire was there, all of these big, major artists at that period of time when we look back, and also writers. And Henri Fantin-Latour was also there. He was a big fan of Delacroix, and he just was kind of surprised there wasn't more of an outpouring to this man that was the leader of this entire movement. And so he decided, he had talked with Baudelaire and Manet, and he wanted to do something. And so he painted a painting that's in the Orsay, and it's called the Hommage to Delacroix. Fantin-Latour never met him. But I love this painting. I share it with people every time I go. It's got a painting of Delacroix in the center of it, and then around it is, Fantin-Latour, Whistler, Baudelaire, and Manet, and all these guys. And they're, holding this bouquet of flowers, or sitting on the table right in front of him. And I just always love to look at that, because he was this giant that inspired the Impressionists, and everyone else. And his home where he lived, in 1874, they sold off a lot of the stuff that was in there. What he didn't leave in his will, he gave some stuff to Jenny, but a lot of stuff was sold off. And then Maurice Denis and Paul Signac and all these guys that came along later ended up kind of creating the Société des Amis de Delacroix, so the Society of the Friends of Delacroix. And with them, they worked tirelessly and endlessly. They even got some of those paintings back. And then they ended up keeping the atelier. It later was going to go up for sale in 1951. And that's when these guys kind of stopped that. And the 1971, it was opened as a national museum. And then in 2004, it was attached to the Louvre.
Wow. So that's not till 2004. It was
Not till 2004. And the cool thing about it is if you do go to the Louvre with the next day, that same day or the next day, you could take your Louvre ticket to the Delacroix, which is just super close. It's about 15 minutes from the Louvre, more like 10. And you show them your Louvre ticket and you could go there for free.
I bet nobody knows that.
Nobody knows that. And it's small. It's, you kind of go up the stairs and there's 3 tiny rooms that have stuff about him, which is where he lived. And then you barely take a few steps and you're out the back door.
Yeah, I've been
But they do, like right now, the exhibit is called Delacroix and the Arts. And so it's a lot about him being influenced by books. And there's even some sheet music that people would write that he would do the illustrations on. There's a painting of Jenny, his wonderful companion Jenny that took care of him. It's a beautiful museum, and even if you just go in the back and sit in the courtyard, it's worth it.
And he had a nice little garden back there.
I know, it's really, I love sometimes because I'm a member of the Louvre, so I could go in really anytime I want. So sometimes I have actually just gone back there just to sit back there and read.
Yeah, because it's never busy. There's no one there.
No, it's never very busy. It's kind of nice. And on yesterday, I did a live video walking around in honor of him and walking around because there is a fountain to him in the Luxembourg. There's a bust of him in the Luxembourg. And I kind of walked around all these places that he lived here in Saint-Germain. And so I will link that as well on the website.
Well, make sure you check out the website, guys. And thanks so much to Claudine for sharing all this wonderful information with us. And check out ClaudineHemingway.com and tune in next week. Thanks for listening today, guys. If you're interested in learning more about Claudine, her tours, history, and the beautiful photographs that she posts all over Instagram, tune into her website, ClaudineHemingway.com.